today we're going to be talking all things cyber safety. So we know that this is certainly an area of extreme interest for everyone, and it is getting trickier and trickier to deal with when you're on the internet. So we've got Steven here today, and I'm going to ask him a few questions for everyone. So I guess to start with, Steven, if you could maybe just give us a really quick overview of the top 3 things that people could do to protect themselves. You know, what would they be, the top 3? And then we'll later in the video, we'll go down into detail on what those things are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about security, you know, securing your devices, securing all of your accounts, and securing your emails. And, you know, the most popular alternatives for securing those things is setting passwords. There's the capture challenge, you know, the I'm not a robot challenge, and 2-factor authentication, which is sort of an extra level of security on top of that.
Yeah, I think we're all probably relatively familiar with the passwords and the capture. I don't know how many times I've had to, you know, find the fire hydrants or click the motorbikes or, you know, but maybe some people are not quite as familiar with 2-factor authentication. Can you explain what 2-factor authentication is?
Yeah, so it's a centralized service that generates random passcodes that change usually every 60 seconds. Companies subscribe to these services, and then they present you with a challenge saying, enter your 2-factor authentication code. But then you open up your phone, find the code and enter it. Some of you might remember that there used to be a little dongle that you have to carry around on your keychain. Yes. That's still in place, and usually it's in place for banking, sort of corporate banking. Yep. But nowadays we've got apps that we can have on our phone. So you unlock the phone with your face or your fingerprint, get the code, enter that code in, and it's just a second challenge after you've entered your password.
Okay. You mentioned securing devices. What can people do here about securing devices?
It just means making it more difficult for someone other than you to get access to your device. Historically, it's been a password, but most laptops and phones, like I said, now have facial recognition. I have the face ID and the fingerprint recognition. So the best sort of precautions to have is make sure that your passwords are complex. You know, the old password 1, try and stay away from that. And by complex, I mean a combination of letters, numbers, and special characters. Don't use dictionary words. So don't use cat, dog, elephant, those sorts of things, because attackers have these dictionary algorithms that they use to crack passwords. So they mix all of the words together based on what's in the dictionary and can often crack passwords that way. So, like for example, if you wanted to have, let's use password as an example, you could replace the S's with $signs. You know, you can do the same thing. In other words, replace an I or an L with a 1 and things like that. Another good idea is using a password manager, something like LastPass or I think 1Password is another one, because remembering these complex passwords can be a challenge.
Yes.
But these password managers, you just have to remember one complex password to get access to your password manager, and then you can see all of those complex passwords that you've got there, and they're really easy to use. If you go to a website, the password manager recognizes that you're at this particular website and it says, I know a password for this website. Do you want to use that? And you know, however you've got your password manager secured, you go through that challenge and it presents you with that password. So you don't have to remember all of these really super long passwords. And another one is often we rely on the password manager within our browser. You know, sometimes it comes up and says, do you want to remember this password? Generally not a good idea to store your passwords in your browser, because that relies on the security of your computer, and sometimes computers can be a little bit trickier to secure. So it's best to keep it all in a central place that's managed externally by somebody else, and have it all stored there so that you've got it all in one place.
Great advice. I do love that idea of using some numbers as letters, you know, particularly number 1 as an I and things like that. My tip would be don't use zeros as O's, because sometimes you confuse yourself. But yeah, we tend to confuse ourselves in the office when we've got shared passwords with that regard. Now, you did mention phones and laptops have, you know, face for the phone, face security, and laptops can have that, you know, pass fingerprint security. Is that enough?
Yeah, I mentioned before that computers can often be difficult to make really secure, because that's really the only level of security that you can have on a computer is that login challenge. Once you get into a computer, you've pretty much got free reign of, you know, email and websites and that sort of thing, which is different to a phone or a tablet. Often, every time, you know, you go into your banking software, it prompts you, or it checks your face, that kind of thing. So yeah, phones are a bit more secure. So computers are a little harder, like I said, because the apps are sort of, once they're installed, then they never challenge you again, really. And sometimes you can get a security check when you try and access something on your computer. A security check is sent to your email. Again, we're in that same situation where if somebody has access to your computer, there's no real challenge after that. So the email arrives in your inbox, you're already logged in, you have access to that. So that second level of security is often bypassed by having access to a computer. And two-factor authentication is usually your best bet there, because no matter even if somebody has access to your computer and they try and get access to your banking system, for example, they try and log in, the two-factor challenge comes up, and you're the person who's got that authenticator app on your phone. So anybody who's trying to bypass your security won't be able to see that code. And often you'll get an alert to say, hey, someone's trying to access your system here. So then you can call your bank, or you can change your password, or do whatever you need to do to secure it.
Yes, it's always a little bit scary when you get those emails saying someone's tried to log in. You're sort of like, hang on, was that me? You know. So you mentioned emails there. Nearly all of us, I would imagine, and certainly nearly anyone, you know, watching this, we've got quite a digitally savvy community. So most people have emails. So how does a person secure their email?
Yeah, email is pretty tricky to secure. Like I said, when it's running on your computer, your email program just runs on the computer, so there's no secondary challenge. Really, it's just that facial or fingerprint security to get access to your computer, and then using complex passwords for your account to log in.
Yep. Okay. So so that's securing access to the email programs. So what about staying safe, you know, with spam and identity scams that arrive by email? Yeah,
so the internet, while it's fantastic and there's so much out there, it can also be a little bit tricky to navigate and stay safe. There's always people trying to get access to things that they shouldn't have access to. So some tips to remember when you're working specifically with emails is, if you get an email that's a little bit suspicious, be critical, be suspicious. It's okay to be suspicious of an email. Don't click links in emails. More often than not, if you get an email from your bank or from your ISP or somebody, they specifically say, we will never send you links in emails. And this is the reason why. Don't click links in emails. I'll just reiterate that. It's so important. If you do, if you get an email that requires you to do some sort of action, instead go to that company's website, log in using the account information that you have in your password manager, and look for some sort of announcement or some sort of notification in their system. So you're initiating that, as opposed to clicking a link in an email. Because often, if that email is a spam email or a phishing email, you click the link and it takes you to somewhere that maybe looks like where it says that they're from, but it's actually not. You put your username and your password in, they've got it then because they've captured it. It's the same with text messages. More and more, these phishing and scams are coming through text message. Be be vigilant, and yeah, keep an eye out for what you think might look a little bit suspicious.
Absolutely, and I would say, if you're not sure, just don't click on it. If it is something important, if it really is your bank, or if it really is, the person trying to reach you, they will call your mobile and say, why haven't you responded? So, I guess for us, we see these emails literally on a daily basis coming into the email inboxes in the office scenario, and some people might not see them quite as regularly as we do. But it is, you start to really, you can really tell if you take that advice of what you've just said around checking, if it's supposedly from Telstra, is it, it's such and such email at Telstra, it's really good advice, because some of them are really obvious, and you can't believe that they're getting away with it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's that domain name which is the telltale sign. If you get an email from that says that they're from Telstra, and you look at the email address that it was sent from, and it's come from something at telstra.com, then it's probably legitimate. Still, if you want to be critical of that, being overly cautious is not a bad thing. But often these scam emails come from emails that kind of look like they've come from Telstra. In this example, it might come from, telstra.gmail.com or something like that. So it's not actually telstra.com, it's telstra.something.com. And that's how they're one of the ways that these attackers are trying to get around, trying to trick you.
Yep. Now, that's been really great advice. Do you have any other comments about staying secure online?
I would just say, like I said earlier, be vigilant. Like I said, the internet's a tricky place. It's great, but sometimes it just takes that extra level of vigilance to make sure that what you're being told is actually the truth. And if you're unsure about anything, go to the source, directly to the source. Pick up a phone.
Yeah.
You could even send an email if you have email details of the company that you're querying, but initiate the contact yourself, and then that the person that you're talking to on the other end of the phone is the person that you intend to speak with.
And I think on that point, that's really important is don't call, obviously if it's a text message or if it's an email that says, call if you're not sure, don't call from there. Go and independently look up the number, independently Google the number of, the company that's trying to reach out to you, and call them on that number and actually ask them. I did that recently with a bank one that I received, and they looked in everything and said, we definitely haven't sent you anything. And, obviously I knew to check, but you just, whatever you do, you've got to independently find the contacts and reach out, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've talked about emails, but we haven't really talked about phones, but it's a similar sort of thing too. If you get a phone call from somebody and they say, hey, I'm such and such, and you're not quite sure, there's no reason that you can't say, look, I'm not prepared to give you that information over the phone. I've got your number. I'm going to call you back. And you call back their call center. That's, if they're a legitimate business, they will not take exception to that at all.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Steven, thank you so much today. I think that there's been some great tips. And I think, my takeout from the whole conversation is just be really careful. And if you're not sure, just don't answer it. Don't click on links. Don't call people back, and just stop and take your time, or ask someone else to have a look at it and say, hey, what do you think? Exactly. So thank you very much, Steven.
No worries.